Election aftermath. You, the voters, have spoken, but the political landscape remains very much the same. Plus, a new city policy is freezing out unvaccinated players in minor hockey. A live look at our city on this final day of summer, and the tides are certainly turning. Environment Canada has issued a rainfall warning for our region. That's expected to start tonight. Colette Kennedy will have a detailed look at this later in the program. Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Thanks for watching. It was a late night for anyone who stayed up to wait for election results. And for those who went to bed early, they didn't miss much. The election that Justin Trudeau called in the hopes of winning a majority, in fact, did little to shake up the political map. The Liberals returned to power again as a minority government. And in Windsor-Essex, all incumbent MPs were re-elected. Brian Massey won his 8th consecutive election for the New Democrats, beating out the Liberal Sandra Pupatello by more than 7,000 votes. Chris Lewis held Essex, leaving the NDP far behind. And Liberal Eric Kusmerchuk held on to his riding of Windsor-Tecumseh, albeit narrowly. And well past midnight, it looked like Cheryl Hardcastle might have taken back that riding for the NDP, but then it flipped back to the Liberals. A tight race in Windsor-Tecumseh, where, as Chris Ensing reports, the People's Party of Canada plays a significant factor.
A parking lot celebration. Liberal incumbent Eric Kusmerchuk winning by the slimmest of margins.
He's leading by 155 votes.
Scrolling through the final polls, pulling off a victory on another tight race.
We knew that no matter what the results, we were going to be proud of what we accomplished and the effort we put forward. That's the only thing that we can ever control. But yeah, we seem to have a few of these races always, so we're kind of used to that at this point.
This riding has historically been NDP, but candidate Cheryl Hardcastle has lost again, even with a national focus from the party on a riding to watch. Conservative candidate Kathy Borelli came third, saying she'll keep those election signs, satisfied with her first kick at campaigning.
It was a whirlwind. We got started and never stopped.
A key point in this race, the People's Party of Canada.
It was a bit of a worry, but you know what? Such a fast campaign, I didn't really spend time worrying about things except how many people can I meet and talk to.
Something to reflect on this morning, with the local candidate picking up 11% of the vote, 5 times what the party did in 2019. Well, door knocking, I came across Rick Fusky. He voted PPC. Why?
Getting the sitting Liberal out of power, perhaps even making a compromise and accepting the NDP, but none of that happened, as far as I can tell.
A big claim for a man who ran for the Conservatives in Windsor-Tecumseh in the early 2000s.
What does Justin Trudeau and a minority government need to do for you to...
Go away.
There's nothing, eh?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I think he's damaging the country in many different ways. Either he's going to change tack on the way he spends money and actually think about monetary issues, or we are going to reach a breaking point.
The campaign now over, work begins in Ottawa. But there's also a call to reflect on what politics looks like in Windsor right now. A volunteer coordinator summing up some of the ugly.
I'm a very positive person. I'm very respectful, but I have, experienced homophobic stuff at times. Racist stuff at times at the doors, slurs at me. This is my home and people here are very nice. But yes, we have encountered unpleasantness at doors.
Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Election day was both a good and bad one for Conservative Chris Lewis. Lewis did get re-elected in his riding of Essex, but he was also thrown from a horse, leaving him scraped up, bruised, and in significant pain. In a statement, Lewis explained that while waiting for the election outcome, he decided to take a break and go out for a horseback ride with his wife. His horse became skittish and bucked, throwing him off. Lewis said he went to hospital to receive an assessment and does not yet know the extent of his injuries. And the lack of change brought on by the federal election has many people wondering what it was all for. We asked Windsorites what they made of the results, and here's what some of you had to say.
Happy. I'm happy that he's back in power.
I'm not really happy with the Liberals winning, but I think in 2 years we'll just be right back at the polls.
We're back to the same thing as we were 2 years ago. There's no difference. Wasted time and money for nothing.
I was kind of hoping the Conservatives won. I'm a little tired of Trudeau in office. I think he's done some good things for Canada, but I also think he's done a lot of things wrong. Like an example, the way we've won about COVID, we've had a lot of things go wrong.
Nothing much changed, you know. My New Democrats picked up a seat, yay, you know, but nothing much changed.
Yeah, maybe it wasted a little bit of money, but that's what I like about democracy too. People have their voice heard, and that's fine. So we move on.
Yeah, I watched the election result, and it was amazing. Like the Justin Trudeau, he got the 158 seats, and but he was actually, expecting more. But what we can do.
Even though ballots are still being counted in yesterday's election, it's never too early to look ahead. Ontario's next provincial campaign is less than 9 months away. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley joins us for a look at what the federal vote means for the future of Ontario politics. Mike, Erin O'Toole wasn't able to break through the way the Conservatives had hoped in Ontario, but that's not necessarily bad news for Doug Ford.
Well, that's right, Katarina, and that's because Ontario politics is not necessarily just a carbon copy of what happens at the federal level. You know, it is true that Erin O'Toole did not make the gains that the Conservatives had hoped for, and an Ontario PC strategist that I spoke to today said to me that the reason for that is because O'Toole's positions on vaccinations actually turned off middle-of-the-road voters in Ontario, particularly in the Greater Toronto area. And this strategist thinks that Doug Ford's approach on vaccination passports and on making sure that all of his candidates are vaccinated is actually going to serve him very well during the provincial election.
And Mike, how are the opposition parties feeling about what happened last night, particularly the decimated Ontario Liberals? Yeah, well, look, none of the provincial parties really has any reason to be dancing in the streets over last night's results. And you would think if it would be anybody, that would be the Ontario Liberals. But having more federal Liberals elected is a good thing for that party in terms of on-the-ground campaign support at the riding level. It's also a sign that Liberal brand is still pretty strong in Ontario. But if history is a key factor, listen to this, the Liberals should actually be pretty worried. How often has a provincial party won in Ontario in the very next election after their federal counterparts won? In the last 50 plus years, it's happened exactly once. As for the NDP, now 5 seats in Ontario federally for them is pretty dismal, but that party strategists say voters view the provincial NDP differently from how they view the federal New Democrats. And Andrea Horvath's team thinks that she's got the best shot of knocking off Doug Ford, partly because the NDP is building from a much bigger base of incumbents. And we haven't seen much of the Premier in weeks, and now that the election has passed, what is on the agenda for the Premier? One of my sources tells me that we will actually see Ford at a news conference tomorrow. His officials say that Ford has been staying out of the election campaign spotlight because he wanted to concentrate on doing the job of running the province. And lastly, Mike, what will be the first order of business between Ontario and the new federal government? Well, look, there's no doubt that working on the pandemic together is job one, but there's also the matter of childcare, getting a deal. Ontario is one of only 2 provinces that has not signed on to the federal Liberals' promise of a $10 a day childcare program. I'm told that Ford is willing to sign such a deal if it's good for Ontario, so do stay tuned. Thanks for this, Mike. That's our Queen's Park reporter, Mike Crawley in Toronto. And Premier Doug Ford did make an appearance today in our region. He and the Minister of Natural Resources were on the ground in Wheatley. The Premier and Minister Greg Rickford arrived more than 3 weeks after an explosion destroyed 2 buildings and injured 20 people there. Ford and Rickford met with Chatham-Kent's Mayor Darren Caniff and other municipal officials. They say the province has hired a consulting firm to analyze the area and continue to survey for gas leaks which caused the explosion. The mayor says this visit meant a lot to residents. More than 100 people were displaced following last month's explosion. There's still no timeline for when they can return to their homes. Anyone under 18 looking to play sports or watch sports at indoor city facilities in Windsor will need to be fully vaccinated as of November 1st. The mayor made the last-minute change just a few hours ago, pushing back the date because the rule was initially set to go into effect tomorrow. Drew Dilkins said in a statement he realized it left parents and kids with very little notice. The province only requires spectators 12 and up to be fully vaccinated to enter city rec facilities, but City Council unanimously agreed to take it a step further and require players to do the same.
If he doesn't get it, he can't play. So we just feel like we have our hands tied because, we'll be taking away something that's the thing he loves most in this world is hockey. So we just feel very pressured. I mean, I'm full of anxiety. I mean, I just feel like it's one thing after the other. And just before you kind of start to catch your breath over one thing, it's another thing. And then I feel like we're rushing around and we don't have time to really think about it. And, it's just a lot of pressure.
Amanda Knight has 2 kids who play hockey at city facilities. One will be 12 this year and will need to be fully vaccinated if he wants to continue to play. The city says it took the extra step of requiring young players to be vaccinated to prevent any confusion for the public and staff. And at the same time, they say it's a way for them to increase vaccinations in the city. Knight says she and her son both got their first shots last week, so he can play hockey and she can watch once she's received 2 doses. Let's turn now to the latest on COVID-19 in our region. Another 39 cases of the virus to tell you about, and that means our active cases are now at 333, and that's a number that's continuing to decline. The health unit, however, is reporting that 2 more people have died, and hospitalizations have gone up from 15 yesterday to 20 as of today. The U.S. land border will remain closed to Windsorites for yet another month because of COVID-19. The closure has been ongoing for 18 months. CBC's Jennifer LaGrassa breaks down what it's costing people who live here.
Round-trip plane tickets, about $800. Baggage is $65. 2 COVID-19 tests, about $267. And then parking and gas for the vehicle is about $240. In total, that's $1,300 and about 20 hours of travel time. All of that to get from Windsor to Detroit via Toronto. That's compared to the $12.75 plus gas that it normally would have cost to get to the Motor City pre-pandemic.
One Windsorite says they had the funds to get this done, understanding that many others don't.
The purpose of this tweet was more to showcase that, love shouldn't be divided because of how much money you have in the bank or how much vacation you have banked.
Echoing those statements is master's student Yahya Alphonse. He moved to Windsor for school in May. By now, he thought he'd have the opportunity to cross the border. Without it, he says his education is paying the price.
When I was applying for my master's degree, one thing I really liked about the University of Windsor was its proximity to the US and Detroit. And since I knew I was going to specialize in international relations and global politics, and also want to look at things like trade, I felt like this will be a perfect location. One thing that's very important is kind of cross-collaboration learning, where you get to learn from other people. You go for conferences, you go for events, and you get to network with people, and you get to learn their perspectives and their ideas. And that was something I was hoping to really capitalize on.
Alphonse hopes the border reopens by the time his program finishes in the next year and a half. He says as a student, he can't afford to fly across, so the land border is his only option. But for now, it's a waiting game. Jennifer LaGrassa, CBC News, Windsor.
Pride and Joy. That's the name of a new exhibit at the Art Gallery of Windsor, featuring dozens of artists from the local LGBTQ community. It hopes to spark a dialogue of understanding, inclusivity, and celebration.
Hello there, welcome. Derek Carl Bizzo here, your Special Initiatives Coordinator. They, them pronouns exclusively, and welcome to the Pride and Joy Community Art Exhibition.
For me, it's a really important moment in my life. Having my work included in such a diverse exhibit really means a lot to me. in terms of creating space for myself, as well as being able to express and show the ACE community through my artwork.
This is definitely a piece that I created. It's a collage called The Art of the Fight. I made it during Windsor's Sexual Assault Awareness Month. I'm a survivor of sexual violence, and the piece really captures the journey from kind of that place of trauma to a place of kind of reclaiming a sense of love, happiness, and pride in who I am and my body. That journey is something a lot of people go through, and it's a struggle, right? To get to that point of loving yourself again is radical and revolutionary.
Being able to give myself the space to exist is one of the biggest kindnesses that I can do for myself, and also one of the best things that people can do for themselves within the community. So that's also why it was really important for me to be involved with this exhibition.
The work by trans and non-binary people in art institutions, traditionally we're kind of excluded, or if we are included, it's usually on a negative or kind of the bad things that happen to us rather than focusing and celebrating our pride and joy.
As I started to receive the submissions, I realized how important this show was and how meaningful it was to me personally. And getting to be in this room and look at all the art on the walls, and I've been doing it for a couple weeks now, I feel so good. I feel so grounded and held by community. Very proud, and I feel lots of joy.
And that exhibit runs until the end of October, so there's still plenty of time to check that out. Another live look outside. Can you believe it's the last day of summer? We do have some showers ahead, and it's looking like it actually might hit this region quite hard. So Colette Kennedy will have the full details for us when we come back. Colette Kennedy joins us now for weather. Colette, it's the last day of summer, and with that, Mother Nature gives us a rainfall warning.
Yeah, I don't know if you blame it on summer or you blame it on fall. I guess fall, because it starts tomorrow at 3:21 p.m. A lot of rain coming our way. We've got a system that's essentially going to kind of stall out, and as it does, that's going to allow those accumulations to keep piling up, essentially. So there's the rainfall warning from southwestern Ontario into northeastern Ontario. Thunderstorm risk, and that allows for local amounts to be even higher than some of the projections. 50 to 60 millimeters, some areas over 75. I'm going to show you some pockets. It looks like kind of an area right around London, through that region, where we could see some of those really enhanced amounts. Current temperature, well, the high was 23. Right now it's 22, but we still have a humidex up there at 30. The point is, where this moisture is coming from is the Gulf, so it is a little bit sticky at this point too. Once the front goes through, the southerly winds will change around to the north. That's important because we're talking about rainfall with heavier amounts like this, especially towards Lakeshore, some of the communities there that are prone to flooding. So we've got heavy rains plus a southerly wind that we're seeing ahead of this. Bad combination. As those winds turn towards the north, they will be strong, but that's at least one little piece of good news in here. So it pulls in some heavy rains through the overnight tonight, so it really gets enhanced after midnight and fills in, carries on heavy tomorrow morning, maybe a bit of break in precipitation at times, but then it's going to fill right back in. So it's not just Wednesday. This is going to carry on into Thursday. It will be lighter, though, and then start to break apart. The front moves through, and then we're just kind of on the backside of that circulation, and we get into more of these intermittent showers later on the day on Thursday, but it's still not going to be over with. Have a look. This is just up until taking a look at noon on Wednesday, just, I say, because you can see the totals here. Okay, not terribly impressive, 30 to 40. Watch now as we take in the rest of Wednesday into Thursday. Those double, but those areas towards London approaching 80 to 100 millimeters of rain through those areas. So look at the temperatures overnight tonight, and then what happens tomorrow? Well, 18 degrees, so the readings aren't that as important here as what's going to be happening with that rainfall. Again, it gets a little better on Thursday as it does get lighter, and finally it's gone, so that by Friday, Katarina, we're going to have a beautiful fall day.
Oh, thank you, Colette. This is an important breakdown because, as you mentioned, this region very prone to flooding, so we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Now, when we come back, well, what do you do if you are struggling to meet people and you're fed up with online dating? Well, one man comes up with a 1 in a million approach. We'll tell you more right after the break. Finding true love during the pandemic has been tough for many people, but it's prompted a BC man tired of dating apps to develop a novel approach. Benit Brach brings you his story.
This bachelor is done swiping left.
Just sort of quite tired of dating apps, and during COVID it's quite challenging to meet new people.
His solution, online, but not how you've seen it before. Dan Hawkins is inviting single women to apply, share personal interests, say hello over email, all for the chance to meet him for a blind date. He knows it's not easy to hit send.
To put that email out is hard because it's like you're making yourself pretty vulnerable and sound kind of desperate.
His profile is sent out first, and then his friends look for compatibility and set up a meeting with anyone still willing.
And I think people kind of know I'm a little bit quirky, so it kind of works for me.
He's also tempting would-be matchmakers with nearly $7,000 in prizes. The social experiment is a chance at love Hawkins struggled to find.
I kind of tried to get back into the dating apps, and I was like, oh, this is painful.
For some singles, dating apps did the trick. Billy Coben met her partner 1 month into the global pandemic. She said a dating app helped her get close from a safe distance.
That's not something you can do at meeting people at a bar. You don't have the opportunity to put up those same barriers.
Chatting over video helped her get comfortable. This expert works for Hinge, a dating app, and says more Canadians than ever are using these platforms.
And that's because it's a safe and efficient way to meet people. It's this low pressure vibe check that helps you see, do we have a connection? Do we have chemistry?
She says more Canadians want a committed relationship.
There's an even greater sense of people really wanting to connect in a meaningful way, not just for a hookup.
Vancouver's eligible bachelor can relate.
I'm looking for somebody that's has a kind heart and somebody who's curious and maybe has a sense of humor. Doesn't have to be like my sense of humor.
He says in a time where finding a lifelong partner can feel like a long shot.
I imagine there's a lot of people who are really sick and tired of dating apps, like myself.
It's okay to think outside the box.
Maybe putting yourself out there or just having your friends, put you out there in a fun, safe way.
He says 30 women have so far signed up for the social experiment, and maybe one will be the one. Benit Brach, CBC News, Abbotsford.
A resort in southeast England recently played host to a unique event, the British Speed Golf Championship.
Some nice putts dropped. It's like any golf, isn't it? The ones that you miss.
No lazy days on the links for these competitors. Each one covered 18 holes in back-to-back days, starting both rounds individually at 6-minute intervals, then running between holes and finishing with a sprint. A speed golf score is calculated by combining total shots and the time taken to complete a round. PGA competitor Luke Willett was the big winner at this event. Speed golf started back in California in the late 1970s. That is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, check out our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. And we're on social media as well, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have a great night.